So here we were coming up on Thanksgiving, first holiday without his dad. And we get to his sister hosted that day. And she, this was so subtle and so simple, but so meaningful. As people came to the door, she said, Happy Thanksgiving. We hugged. And then she said, there's a candle on the table in honor of Dad. So as you see this candle, as you see the candle throughout the day, you can stop and think about him. You can talk about him if you want, but just know it's there. So simple, but meaningful.
Welcome to the With You at Every Step podcast. We address your healthcare questions and help you navigate life's challenges. Our guests share their expertise and real-world advice related to care for older adults, grief and healing, and pregnancy and parenting. Every Step is a nonprofit healthcare and human services organization offering dozens of programs that are there when people need us most. Learn more about our free and low-cost services at everystep.org. Thank you for listening. Here is our host, Polly Carver-Kimm.
And thank you again for joining us for With You at Every Step. We're entering, or I guess we're in, the most happy time of the year, the jolliest time of the year. We're having a holly jolly Christmas, but not everybody. So many Iowans are going through grief during the holidays. And that's what we're going to talk about today with Denise Nahnsen. She is a bereavement counselor for Every Step, specifically in the Des Moines area. But I know you go all over the place, Denise, so we appreciate all that you do, and welcome to the show.
Thanks, Polly. I'm glad to be here.
Well, I think one thing that really stands out to me about grief during the holidays is you immediately think of someone who maybe lost a loved one in October or November. But grief can rear its head years and years after the death of someone you love, and there really is no timetable to grief or whether or not you should be feeling it during the holidays, right?
That's correct. And so whether it's been, many, many years or a year or 2 months, like you said, if someone had a loved one die in October, the pain can resurface at the holiday time. There's so many expectations. Like you said, it's supposed to be happy and joyful and holly jolly. And when we're not feeling that on the inside because we're grieving, or the holly jolly memories trigger those, past losses that, well, mom should be here, or, this loved one should be at our celebration. They always made the oyster stew. My grandma always made the oyster stew. And so it just doesn't seem right that she's not here making the oyster stew this year. Those feelings can surface right to the top at the holiday time.
And like you said, there can be a number of different triggers. It's not just, your inward thoughts of, oh, I miss Dad or whatever, I miss whoever, my grandma and grandpa. It's like you said, it can be a dish that you ate. I remember one time myself personally, I was walking through Hobby Lobby of all places. And I don't know, just one of the decorations, I had to leave the store. I was so overcome. So really, triggers are very personal, aren't they?
Yes, they are. It could be smells or songs or walking through Hobby Lobby or the grocery store. We call those grief bursts. And they happen probably always for people. I think at the beginning, shortly after their loved one dies, they happen frequently, where they find just all of a sudden they're in tears. But over time and with, some good grief work, they find those grief bursts happen less often, but still happen. Can be years later.
And you talk about doing grief work. That's what you're an expert in. What kind of things can we do, or the work we can do, to especially address grief during the holidays? I mean, I know you address grief year round, but during the holidays, what are some of the things we can do to help us get through this time?
Yeah, I think there are a handful of things that we talk about a lot and I read about a lot. In grief in general, there's no right or wrong way to do grief. So I would say there's no right or wrong way to do the holidays when you're grieving. make it your own, personalize what you need. So for example, if you need to step away from some activities you used to do because you need some quiet time, if you need to change a tradition this year, or maybe some people want to keep all the traditions the exact same. Some people want to change them up a little bit because it doesn't feel right. So kind of pay attention to yourself and what you need during the holidays. We like to encourage people to make a plan for the day rather than to go into, okay, this is Christmas Day, I'm just going to pretend I'm not grieving. If you can really compartmentalize like that, I think that'd be pretty tough for most people. So if you can make a plan, I'm going to go to the traditional get together, but I'm going to allow myself an opportunity to step away if I need to, or leave early if I need to. Just having a plan. We also encourage people, if they're able, because this can be hard, to do something to remember and honor their loved one. So whether that can be, I've seen all sorts of different things, as simple as lighting a candle on the table. I knew a family who set a place setting for their loved one who wasn't there that year to signify that there was a missing spot at the table, to going out of town. People have done all sorts of different things, but or you can purchase a gift that your loved one might have purchased, or eating their favorite food, all sorts of different ways. But to remember and honor them in some way, although that's painful, it can also be meaningful.
Denise, how do you deal with maybe other family members or relatives or friends who don't understand that you need some of these actions to help your grief, or who think, well, aren't you over it by now? Or, that's so insensitive, but I know people encounter that.
They do. And that's tricky to navigate that. Communication is valuable if you're able to, and I always feel bad when I encourage people that are grieving to educate the people around them, because they have enough on their plate just with their grief and looking at the holidays. But maybe you have to tell your loved ones, I'm sorry, this is grief, and it doesn't go away after 1 month. It's going to be with me always. Maybe you may have to educate your loved ones. You may have to set boundaries with people that are not helpful, or that even want to derail your grief. People that are saying, shouldn't you be over it by now? They are not helping in your grief. And so if you have to step away from that relationship for a short time, we don't ever believe people have evil intentions or that. They just don't understand. So, be with those that are most supportive and most understanding and non-judgmental. And then you have to be sometimes with family who might be the people that are not so helpful, but, doing your best, communicating what you need, taking good care of yourself in the midst of all of it, getting good rest, sleep, which we know is hard when you're grieving, but if you can take a nap or say no to some activity so you can rest, so you're, at your best that way, moving your body a little bit every day, eating as healthy as possible, those kind of basic self-care things, positive self-talk, just, not being too hard on yourself if you're having a rough day, because you probably will. It's a hard time, and just acknowledging that and not setting the expectations too high, to tell yourself, I may cry today and that's okay.
That is a really good point, Denise, that the expectations of not just having a Hallmark movie holiday, but also the expectations for yourself. And I think we all sometimes place unrealistic expectations on ourselves of, well, I'll get through this and I'll be smiling, or the expectation of, man, this is going to be an awful day. That's the opposite side of it, that you really shouldn't go into it with that either, should you?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I think maybe neither extreme, maybe somewhere in the middle is more realistic, right? Like you just said. And often I hear from people that the anticipation of the holiday, they just dread, and they get kind of anxious and worked up, and I don't know what that day is going to be like. I'm so worried. And then they'll tell me after the holiday that the actual day itself wasn't near as bad as they thought it was going to be. So maybe that would offer some listener out there some hope that sometimes the day of the holiday itself isn't as bad as they had imagined leading up to it. Can't say that for everyone because it's going to be different for everyone, but
sure.
But yeah, to set some realistic expectations.
As you talk about, talking with some of the people you've worked through their grief, do any stories come to mind of grieving through the holidays and how they got through it, or advice you gave them?
Yeah, one family that I always talk about at the holidays. I mean, there's many, but this particular family, the wife and mom of adult children had died. And so every holiday that came around, it started with Thanksgiving, Christmas, but we met this husband who had lost his wife, called a family meeting and invited me to come every holiday. We sat around his kitchen table, and he was so honest with his adult kids. He's, for Christmas, for example, he said, "Your mom was Christmas. She loved everything about Christmas and the shopping and the baking and the cooking." And he said, "I can't be that. I can't do that. It's not me." He said, "But I still, I want to have Christmas, of course." And he said, "So can I give you all money and you buy presents for your children from me? I want to give my grandkids gifts, but I can't go shopping and do all the things." And so, of course, his kids said, "Of course." So they made a plan that he would give them money. They would buy gifts for the grandkids. And then he said, "I love to wrap, so bring them over. I'll wrap all those presents." And then, I think it was for another holiday, but on the same lines, he said, "I don't know how to make biscuits and gravy, so we might not be able to do that." I think this might have been for Easter. And his daughter said, "I know I'll come over and make biscuits and gravy." So it was this beautiful communication that they had for every single holiday that first year, and just really helped them navigate it and set good expectations for the whole family of what was going to happen. And then another one I'll share, just because it's so simple and it's personal to me. This was way back before I was in hospice care, but my husband's father had died the previous year. And so here we were coming up on Thanksgiving, first holiday without his dad. And we get to his sister hosted that day. And she, this was so subtle and so simple, but so meaningful. As people came to the door, she said, "Happy Thanksgiving." We hugged. And then she said, "There's a candle on the table in honor of Dad. So as you see this candle, as you see the candle throughout the day, you can stop and think about him. You can talk about him if you want, but just know it's there." So simple, but meaningful. So those two examples come to mind of things people have done. I just learned so much from what others do, and try to encourage people also to consider the fact that it's okay to have some fun on the holidays. You're going to feel sadness, and when you feel sadness, you cry, and that's okay. But you can also feel joy, and it's okay to enjoy time with your family, and you can feel both feelings even in the same moment.
That's a great point, because I think when you're grieving, you do feel guilty for being happy sometimes. Yeah. What you're telling, when you're talking about the couple of people that you worked with, it just stands out that communication is really the key to, so many things in life, but in this case particularly, to let people know, hey, I just can't do that, or I need help. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people aren't willing to ask for help.
Yes.
There's no shame in that, is there?
No shame in that at all. Even if we're not grieving, it's helpful to ask for help at the holidays because we're overwhelmed, right?
Oh,
so
yeah.
Definitely. And to ask for understanding, maybe even, to say, yes, I'd love to come to your dinner. It's hard for me this year because so-and-so just died. And so if I need to leave early, is that okay? You can accept an invitation, but kind of give yourself an out in case it gets too hard.
Uh-huh. Those are great tips. And then, of course, when do you know I need more help than I'm getting on this podcast, for instance? Every Step has a full slate of grief and loss services. They're all free. How do you know when maybe you need to reach out to somebody like Every Step?
Yeah, that's a good question. Gosh, how would I answer that? Some people have family and friends, as we talked earlier about, that are very understanding and non-judgmental, and they feel great support with their family and friends. They have someone they can confide in and talk to. So I would say for the listener who maybe doesn't feel they have that, or let's say it two ways. Maybe they don't feel they have family and friends they can talk to about what they're going through, and they just need to talk. They feel burdened. They feel heavy. And sometimes people have family and friends that would be happy to listen, but they don't feel comfortable for whatever reason. I hear a lot, well, I don't want to burden my children. They have enough on their plates. They lost their dad. So if I talk about losing my husband to them, well, they're grieving too. So I'll hear a lot, it's helpful to talk to someone outside the family. So that would be, I guess if for anyone who feels overwhelmed and overcome, and they just think it would be helpful to talk or receive support, or, to talk one-on-one, like with me, is helpful. But our grief support groups where people can share their stories and hear other people, it's so normalizing to hear that others are going through something very similar to what you're going through. And then the group is so beautiful how somebody will share something and the group supports them, and then another person talks. Just the support that goes back and forth in a group is so beneficial, I think. So if you don't feel you have that support out there in your own community, your own circle of people, then seek it out.
I have talked to so many people who have participated in grief support groups, and I would say, golly, 75% of them at least, when they tell their story, they say, I was invited to a grief support group, but I thought, nah, I don't want to go because it's a bunch of strangers and I don't want to embarrass myself by crying, or I don't know what I'll say. I don't know anybody. And some people immediately think that's the thing for me. But this other 75% who think I don't know, that's not for me. Every single one of them has said how amazing it was to be in that group. Some of them have developed lifelong friendships way past the group they were a part of, that there is a sense of community there that you don't expect, I think.
Yes, definitely. And it's just, people get it in a grief support group. They're there for the same reason you are. And where maybe your family, your friends maybe don't get it. They're trying maybe, but they just don't. Those people in the group do get it. It's a good place to process grief, to learn a little bit, but just to share your own. I think grief needs to be witnessed. People need to be heard and understood when they're grieving. So just the listening ear of a group of people, someone nodding like, yeah, I get it, I've been there, means a lot, and it's very helpful.
Denise, as we start to wrap up our conversation here, is there anything that I didn't touch on, any tip that you really wanted to pass along for getting through the holidays that you'd like to share with people, or maybe just a thought regarding grief that might resonate with someone?
I like to share grief and love, like picture a coin. Grief and love are two sides of the same coin. So we grieve so deeply because we loved so deeply. And so whatever that means for you at this holiday time, I guess your grief speaks to your love. And the love is something to definitely be thankful for. So while it is going to be a different holiday, it is going to be painful. There are going to be moments of grief bursts, of tears. Expect that. But also maybe you can find a nugget of thankfulness in the fact that you had such a great love in that relationship you had, and what you still have. It's it's hard. It's hard, but we wish people hope. Yeah, hope that whether it's in the day, getting through the day, whether it's in remembering the good things as well as the bad. We've got to be realistic, but hope for the future.
Denise, thanks so much for joining us today.
You're welcome.
Denise is just so skilled in this arena, and she's one of our bereavement counselors. She's with Every Step Hospice in Des Moines. And we mentioned those grief and loss services. Every Step has free grief support groups, free events that we have to commemorate a loved one. There's a whole slate of help for you out there that is free from Every Step. You can access that by going to our website, which is everystep.org, and then add on to that /care, everystep.org/CARE. And that'll take you to a little electronic form, really simple to fill out. And just say, I need some help with grief during the holidays, or I just need some help with grief, or whatever it might be. And a real human person will reach out to you and find the help that you need free of charge. So, Denise, thank you again.
You're welcome, Polly. Good to talk to you today.
Yeah, absolutely. I always enjoyed speaking with Denise. That is With You at Every Step. Thank you so much for tuning in.